Hello, 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 and thank you so much for stopping by. I'm Soraya Marshall Wright. Welcome to The World According to Soraya. All right, so we are actually in my Rock Hill office. That's why it's not as dark as it normally is in my videos in my home dungeon. So I'm just getting back here after doing a seminar at the York Senior Center. And although I spoke to a relatively small crowd, fewer than 50 people, I had two individuals approach me at the end, and they both had similar experiences with something that I'm going to discuss with you today. All right, so in estate planning, specifically in elder law estate planning, an attorney typically has to use several different strategies when planning for long-term care. Part of that will often include some type of trust document. What happened in the case of the two people who approached me, they both had trusts created for them, but they were not the type of trust that would actually protect their assets from long-term care. Now, for lack of a better word, there are several different flavors of trust, if you will, and the provisions that will be included in each trust will depend on the reason why the trust was created to begin with. But regardless of what flavor trust you're talking about, they can only fall under one of two categories. It would either be a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust. So, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about this right now. My intent is to give you just a high-level overview of how they are different and why one would work for long-term care planning purposes and one would not. So when we are talking about a revocable trust, let's pretend that the trust itself is a treasure chest. So you transfer all of your assets into this treasure chest. You transfer legal title of your accounts, your home, whatever it is that you choose, into the treasure chest. If it is a revocable trust, the key to the treasure chest remains in your hand. There are also usually three key players in a trust. There is the grantor, the person who's actually giving his or her assets or creating the trust. There is the trustee, the person tasked with managing the trust. And there's the beneficiary or beneficiaries. Now, in the case of a revocable trust, most of the time, all three players could be the same person, and it's a non-issue. The key's in your hand. You could take things out of the treasure chest. You could put things back in. You could switch out assets. You could do whatever you want. You have complete control. As a result, because you have complete control, the assets in the trust are still countable for Medicaid purposes. They're still countable as far as your creditors are concerned. Yeah, the assets transferred are protected. This will prevent your family from having to go to probate if something happens to you, but it will not accomplish long-term care planning. Now, the other type of trust is a irrevocable trust. Now, same concept, transferring your assets into the treasure chest, transferring legal title of what you're choosing to protect into the chest, except the key is not in your hand. You're giving that key away to somebody else to manage. You no longer have control over the assets. And the only person who can open up that treasure chest and take things out is the person with the key. And if we are planning for long-term care purposes, the person who expects to need the long-term care cannot have control over those assets. As long as you have control, they're yours. They can be accessed by your creditors and they are accountable for Medicaid purposes. But if you do not have access to these assets, you've relinquished all your rights to them, you've relinquished control to hopefully somebody you trust, then they will be out of the reach of your creditors, and after a certain period of time, they will not be countable for Medicaid purposes. All right, so you have a revocable trust And an irrevocable trust, you either have the key or you don't. If you have the key and you have access and you have control, it's yours and it's accessible and it will not accomplish long-term care planning. All right, so if you didn't know, now you know. See you next time.